Welcome to the madhouse, Batman!
You're not going anywhere I don't want you to.
Surprise!
The code won't get you anywhere. You're trapped in it.
Now the inmates are running the asylum.
Joker's in control of the island.
That's not all he's done. All police beats are reporting he's placed bombs all over Gotham. Says he'll detonate them if anyone sets foot on Arkham Island.
I've got myself a little security.
Help me, Batman!
Who else wants to get crazy?
I will break you, Batman! I will enjoy feasting on your bones.
You've ingested enough toxins to drive 10 men insane. I think you need a little more.
Caught like a bat in a trap. You cannot be Mother Nature, but she can destroy you.
Bruce, are you sure about this? Sounds like a suicide mission.
I've got no choice.
Let's start the party with a bang.
The Arkham series is the most celebrated set of Batman games ever created, and for good reason. They are without a doubt the greatest Batman games ever made. I know that these sound like opinions, but when they're such universally accepted opinions, they pretty much masquerade as fact. 3 out of 4 games are the most critically acclaimed superhero games ever made. In a lot of ways, these games felt like a spiritual successor to Batman the Animated Series, which makes some sense as a lot of the same people behind that iconic show were also behind these games. Batman the Animated Series co-creator Paul Dini was brought in to craft a story centered around the Caped Crusader and his rogues gallery. Returning talents include Kevin Conroy's Batman, Mark Hamill as the Joker, and for the first game in the series, Arlene Sorkin as Harley Quinn. The reunion doesn't really stop there either, as they also brought back Adrienne Barbeau, that shows Selina Kyle / Catwoman, Kimberly Brooks, who played one of the 3 Batwomen in Mystery of the Batwoman, and Cree Summers, who portrayed one of Terry's best friends in Batman Beyond. The 3 returning actresses would play the role of Arkham Doctors, and much more importantly, that series' Batwoman played the Arkham series' former Batgirl. There have been others in later games, but we'll get to them in due time. So while this series may have a look of its own, it still sounds very familiar to fans. I always felt with the way that the first game played it close to the chest, that it could have been considered canon to those other Batman shows, just viewed under a different lens. Is that the phrase? Did I get it right? Of course, this ultimately wouldn't be the case, as future installments would see Batman's first meeting with some of his previously established foes, and other clear would-be continuity errors. But nevertheless, if Batman the Animated Series was a darker take on the mythos for a growing audience, then the Batman Arkham series was an even darker take on the mythos for an almost grown audience. In a way, it felt like the material was evolving with its fanbase. This was a modernized, adult-oriented take on the series that gave you the chance to actually be Batman.
This device makes the audience feel like they're inside the show. Why be brutalized by an uncaring world?
Arkham Asylum isn't just a game. It's an experience, a necessity for every Batman fan, even the ones who aren't necessarily gamers. It's quite frankly one of the greatest pieces of Batman media ever created. It captures the world of the character arguably better than any other interpretation ever has, and maybe ever will. It does justice to the heroes and villains of Gotham City, legitimizes them, and makes them feel, well, real engine. The design fit the depiction. It's clear that Arkham wasn't handling the adult material with kid gloves. This was a much less toned down and dark and gritty take on the Dark Knight. It almost looked like something straight out of the comics, and in a lot of ways it was. The story for the game was of course based on Grant Morrison's Arkham Asylum, A Serious House on Serious Earth. A similar story conceptually, though the game does take a lot of deviations from the actual comic. I wouldn't say the game is an adaptation of that story, but it is definitely largely inspired by it, with the two carrying the same basic plot, and a lot of the game being largely influenced by that comic. So as you can imagine, having the guy behind the most successful Batman series, and the voices behind the greatest versions of the Batman characters, in a game based on one of the all-time greatest Batman stories ever told, unsurprisingly was a recipe for success. The story is relatively simple. The plot begins the same way most Batman stories end, with Batman capturing the Joker yet again and delivering him to Arkham Asylum. But something feels a little off. Joker was taken out with relative ease, something Batman knows. Under suspicions, Batman accompanies the Joker back into the asylum, only to play right into the Joker's plan. As opposed to breaking out of Arkham once again, this time around he decides to trap Batman inside it. It doesn't help matters that his crew have conveniently been moved over from Blackgate just in time for Joker's homecoming, with Harley acting as the hostess. Unfortunately for Batman, the inmates are now running the asylum. The Dark Knight now has to navigate his way through Arkham while encountering the escaped criminals and villains that he helped put in there, with the Joker carefully and cleverly crafting every assembly of antagonists, every setup and scheme, every twist, turn, and trap to get one over on his career-long foe. Which really puts that segment from Batman Dark Tomorrow in question.
I know you weren't behind all this, Joker.
What? You don't think I could have pulled all this off? Releasing Killer Croc, giving Poison Ivy a house plant, kidnapping Commissioner Gordon? On the nosy!
With each challenge being just as unpredictable for the Dark Knight as it is for those playing as him. The whole game is complete chaos, with Batman desperately trying to track down the Joker, who's running roughshod in Arkham. But instead he's constantly bombarded by Joker's goons, vengeful villains, and just overall chaotic situational circumstances. The plan is seemingly foolproof. The Joker doesn't just have one masterful scheme, he has schemes within schemes. The guy has a contingency plan for his contingency plans. Which is interesting, because who does that sound like? The Joker's mayhem is not without consequence. His punchlines often come with a body count, with various Gotham City police officers, security guards, and even asylum doctors being injured or, in most cases, murdered. Despite his best efforts, Batman can't save everyone, and he sure doesn't. Even Jim Gordon is held hostage at one point in time. Twice. Making matters worse, the Joker's there to taunt Batman at his every turn, acting as the twisted brother eye of the asylum, menacingly mocking the Caped Crusader in his every action. Batman has to overcome and essentially recapture the patience he put in, each boss offering up some new sort of challenge for the world's greatest detective. Having to avoid a monstrous Bane blindsided by his venom in battle, saving doctors from the serial killer Victor Zsasz, beating floods of Joker's clowns. Killer Croc even tries to take a bite out of him at one point. The Scarecrow-based missions are especially memorable for me, providing otherworldly, reality-distorting visuals while giving the player completely different challenges unlike anything else the game has to offer. Exploring the asylum while also exploring Batman's psyche. I've always enjoyed the Scarecrow as a villain, not just because he's a great villain in his own right, but because his, for lack of a better word, ability lends to interesting storytelling. Through these induced hallucinations, we learn more about the inner workings of his targets. Through Batman's illusions and delusions, we learn about his greatest fear, failure. While some of the toxin forces Batman to relive his trauma and see scary sights, it mostly shows Batman's loved ones being hurt and himself unable to save them. I think that tells a lot about his character. A lot of this has a very cinematic feel to it. So much so that I'm intentionally padding out this paragraph to give myself more time to show off the Scarecrow sections of the game. Really, there's something to look at. This truly feels like an amalgamation of torture on all of the Dark Knight's senses, challenging him physically and mentally in an atmosphere trying to break him spiritually.
I was wondering what would break first. Your spirit or your body?
But here's the kicker. While that's enough plot all on its own, this is only phase 1 of the Joker's plan. You see, the Joker's actually after a formula that some of the not-so-good doctors conjured up. A serum created by Dr. Young and a pre-Scarecrow Dr. Crane, unbeknownst to them, under the Joker's funding. It was developed initially to help patients endure some of the more strenuous treatments and experiments the asylum would perform on them, combining bits of Bane's venom with Poison Ivy's plant life. The concoction was enough to transform a man into a monster in a matter of moments, with the Joker wanting it to create an army of clown Banes, turning Gotham City into the world's biggest circus act, if it wasn't already. Obviously, our hero needs to put a stop to this, but he encounters a couple of new challenges along the way. including Poison Ivy and her plants, which are now being affected by Titan, leading to Batman having to defeat Poison Ivy's final form transformation. Scarecrow also tries to poison the water supply with his fear toxin, a story beat straight out of Batman the Animated Series, only to seemingly be eaten by Killer Croc. It's in Croc's lair where spores from Ivy's plant are found and are used to make a potential Titan antidote. When the world's greatest detective finds the Clown Prince of Crime, it's behind an army of GCPD corrupted into his mutant henchmen, threatening to do the same to a re-kidnapped Jim Gordon. But Batman dives in front of him, thus being infected by the formula. And just as his transformation starts to take effect, Batman fights the change, being heavily resistant to the formula. Similar to how earlier in the story he fought off the effects of a direct fear toxin injection at the claws of the Scarecrow. The Joker, in turn, injects himself with Titan, making him just as monstrous on the outside as he's been on the inside. Strangely enough, this Joker actually bears a passing resemblance from the Joker on the show The Batman when he's using Bane's venom. It's a similar look for a similar story beat. Both he and the Joker are now affected by Titan, but there's only enough antidote for one. Does he inject his enemy and continue to fight the transformation? No, he injects himself without hesitation. And even with the odds against him, he manages to take on hordes of Joker's enhanced henchmen, while the Brute in clown shoes shows off for the helicopter cameras that are flying above them. Ultimately, and unsurprisingly, Batman defeats the Joker, because even with the added muscle, he's still no match for the Dark Knight. I think this whole game, but especially this ending, is the perfect representation of the endless Joker-Batman cycle. Because in the end, Batman wins, but the Joker still does everlasting damage. He's brought devastation upon Gotham City again, or more accurately, on Arkham Island. He's taken lives that can never be restored. He's unleashed horrors into the world of Gotham that won't even come to full fruition until later installments. The game ends with the villain's hand bursting out of the river and hoarding over a case of the formula. Depending on what difficulty you play on, the famous figure will either be Bane, Croc, or Scarecrow, though only one of these endings is accepted as canon, and we'll get into why later on. Outside of the villains who played a part in Joker's master plan, there's still plenty present, in one form or another. Not every character the game has on display is integral to the plot at hand. Some are just world-building cameos or references to rogues. A pre-creeper Jack Ryder is heard reporting on the incidents at Arkham Asylum. A wanted sign for Prometheus can be seen in the guard's room. A newspaper clipping can be found of Firefly. Dr. Thomas Elliot's name is on a sign-in sheet. The Floronic Man appears in Poison Ivy's audio backstory bio. The Joker drops several references to sidekick Robin. Lucius Fox even gets a name drop. And at one point, a present for Penguin is shown. That's just naming some things that stick out to me. The game even ends with Batman being informed that Two-Face is on the loose. Even when a character isn't present, the game lets you know that they're still around. Somewhere out there. And maybe we'll see some of them again. Characters who play important roles in other games in the lineup appear as background characters here. Ra's al Ghul's corpse can be seen in the morgue, but should you return here later, you find out that this was a part-time appearance. Clayface is shown, sort of, just hanging out in a cell. You never see the actual Clay Man, just the characters he decides to morph into in a failed attempt at convincing the player to let him out. Black Mask doesn't make an appearance, but his mask does in Dr. Young's office. And there's also some newspaper clippings which reference Roman Sionis. And if you have a keen eye, files on Hugo Strange can be spotted. These minor background additions really immerse the player in the universe, as well as making it feel like there's a sense of synergy between the games, even though in some cases it's very apparent that there was not. Collectively combined, they help shape a greater picture that feels like a more fluid linear narrative. In short, it helps tie the games together better. Even the characters who don't necessarily make an appearance still have their presence felt. While the ventriloquist is MIA, the ventriloquist dummy is on full display. There may not be any Arnold Wesker, but there still is a Scarface, appearing in the Warden's office before being dumb-napped by the Joker and given a brand new makeover. The Riddler also never appears in the game, but he still manages to play a major role to the story, or more accurately, to the gameplay. And while Edward Nygma might not be seen, he is certainly heard, communicating with Batman via radio, trying to get the Dark Knight to solve his riddles and complete his puzzles, leaving behind a Riddler trophy for his troubles. And believe you me, there are a lot of these things scattered throughout the game. 240 of them, to be exact. But the big reveal comes when Batman finds the final Riddler trophy. Because that's the point in the game where the Riddler himself is found. Once again, they don't show him getting arrested, but you do get to hear him curse Batman's name.
Tell me, how did you work out where I was? Do you hear me? I, Edward Nigma.
The former Batgirl and current Oracle, Barbara Gordon, never makes a physical appearance in the game either, but she still serves a purpose in the game, guiding Batman through the halls of Arkham via Bluetooth. There are plenty of nods to the comic which inspired and clearly informed this game. Beetles can be spotted everywhere through Arkham, and that's because in the comic this game is loosely based on, Amadeus Arkham was obsessed with beetles. His strange circular writing is a nod to his spellbinding in the book. By playing the Arkham Warden's audio files back, you can hear about his intense obsession with Amadeus Arkham, which once again is a plot point that is lifted directly from the book. The game also plays out the aftermath of a major plot in the comic series, Arkham Asylum: Living Hell. A security guard at Arkham, Aaron Cash, clashed with Killer Croc, leading to the loss of his left hand. Both Cash and Croc are seen in the game, and both refer to it, with Aaron carrying around the souvenir. Killer Croc's audio files actually depict their rivalry almost verbatim. Harley's audio tapes essentially recreate her origin story from the new Batman Adventures, and comic story it was based on, Mad Love, word for word. Bane reenacts his famous breaking of the Bat's back from Nightfall in a game over cutscene. And there are several references to the Killing Joke made throughout. There are visuals that are taken out of that classic comic, plot points taken from that comic, including Joker giving multiple conflicting backstories in his audio files, and even direct lines of dialogue lifted from it.
Two guys in a lunatic asylum. Oh, hell, you've heard that one before, haven't you?
Even the Batman suit itself was based on various different versions of the suit.
We wanted to do something that took from every great visual interpretation of Batman. It isn't solely the Wildstorm look. There's a little bit of Neil Adams in there. There's a little bit of Frank Miller.
This whole game is honestly a love letter to the lore, a celebration of the Batman brand in general. You can make a compilation of people saying,
Arkham Asylum makes you feel like you're Batman.
There's a reason this phrase bears repeating, and has been repeated, and that's because it's true. This game quite possibly is the most authentic Batman ever created. Point blank, it just excels on every level. As a piece of Batman media, it's a painstakingly accurate adaptation that does its own thing with established characters and story beats. It's everything you can ask for in a Batman project. And as a game, it's beyond fun. You don't need to be a fan of the source to be a fan of the game. I'm sure this game, and the ones that followed it, probably made fans out of a lot of people who were otherwise indifferent. For lack of a better word, Arkham Asylum was perfect. The game is great as a game, but it's also great as a look into the Batman lore in general. I think it works as a great introduction to the Batman character and to the world of Batman. It's a recreation of the Batman mythos made with love by people with talent, with some of the most important names in modern Batman history attached to it. So make no mistake, Batman Arkham Asylum isn't just a game. It's art, with a game over.
Someone finish him off.
And with that pretentious statement, let's end it with this. If you liked this video and would like to see a part 2, let me know in the comment section below by leaving a comment saying,
Arkham is for the criminally insane.
I am vengeance. I am the night, and that was V Infuso. Just remember, if you're not tuning in, then you're missing out.
So, if you like the words that came out of his mouth hole, and you too would like to become a V-generate, don't forget to like and subscribe. Thanks for watching, nerds!
And if you're not joining the fun, you're in for one bad day. And you know what they say about having one bad day?
Catch him next time. Same bat time. Same bat channel.